Tervehdys Dekkarifestivaali yleisö. Minä olen Marko Hautala ja olen kauhukirjailija, mutta mulla on tänään ilo haastatella kahta ruotsalaista dekkaristia. Welcome to Helsinki Crime Fiction Festival, Lina Areklew and Tove Alsterdal.
Thank you so much. Kiitos hyvin.
Kiitoksia. Ja hienoa, että olette täällä in Finnish. That's the last Finnish I'm going to speak. Okay, we are going to talk about two of your novels. Lina has written a novel called Juhannusruusut. That's the Finnish title for it. And Tove Alsterdal has written a novel called Juurakko. And Tove Alsterdal's novel also won the Glass Key Award. So congratulations for that as well. Two brilliant novels. Lina Areklew's Juhannusruusut, it's a murder mystery, it's a crime novel, so that's not a big surprise, but of course it's situated on the island of Uuden in the north of Sweden. And we are talking about this Höga Kusten area. And in Juhannusruusut, Fredrik Förding, a guy who has survived the Estonia catastrophe in 1994, is one of the main characters. And there's also a policewoman, Sofia Juurten, who has moved back from Stockholm to her home island. And these two people had a brief affair in the past. And the story takes place on the island of Uuden, and the murder and the mystery in the novel, of course, goes far deeper than just the present events. Tove Alsterdal's Juurakko also begins with a murder, but in the present, but the story takes us back in time to an earlier sexual assault and murder of a young girl. And the character Olof Hagström was accused as a teenager of this crime, and now he's back to his home region of Ådalen, where his father has now been murdered. And the other protagonist is policewoman Eira Sjödin, who has returned to Ådalen from Stockholm. So there are some similarities there. And as the name of the novel, Juurakko, roots, suggests, the roots of this murder case go far deeper in the history of the area than is apparent on the surface. So there are some similarities. And first of all, we are talking about the specific area in Sweden, Höga Kusten, and then you have these specific places in that area. And quite often in crime fiction, the setting is also a kind of a character. How would you describe your characters, meaning the setting of Uuden and Ådalen, and maybe the Höga Kusten area in general? If Lina would like to start, please.
Well, Uuden is, I tend to describe it as a very magical place. As soon as you arrive there, you feel sort of history, and you feel a connection with the people also who live there, because there are still 30 people living there all year round. And people are very friendly and very open. And if you take a moment to step away from the touristy places, there's so much to see and so much to experience. So I think that's a very true description, that it's a character itself, and it will play a big role in my coming books as well, trying to show it to the readers both in the wintertime and in the summertime, and which is like the wintertime, which is where my second book takes place, and it has a sort of down or low-key feeling to it. And I know that the people who live on the island, that's their favorite time, when the island is freed of the tourists and they can continue living the island life.
Okay, yeah, and as said, it's also a tourist attraction part of the year, so that creates a specific kind of atmosphere for the place.
Yeah.
Tove Alsterdal, how about Ådalen then?
It's not far away. It's just like well, you can drive in a couple of hours or something, but it's a totally different area. We got the same landscape, but where my book takes place and where I also live part of the time of the year, it's up in the river valley, or Ångermanälven, and it's a former industrial area. It's actually like the heart of Sweden. It was where lots of the Swedish wealth was created in the early, like 100 years ago. There were sawmills all along this valley, and today it's one left. There were like 20,000 people working in those sawmills, and today it's like 300. So it's been like crisis for a half a century. And there are still, I mean, the industries are almost totally gone, but they still remain as like phantoms, like ghosts.
Yeah.
In the soul of the people, and also like, you know, by the seashore, by the river shore, there are like, you can find those ruins everywhere you walk, and the timber like floats up when the ice goes in the springtime and so on. So it's like the pains of a phantom, we say in Sweden. I don't know if you have that word, but it's still like keeping this area very like in a very hard grip. And I wanted to write that. I've had a cottage there for like 20 years, and I really wanted to write the area. That's how it all started. I wanted to like write this area because I think it's so beautiful, but it's also there has certain sadness to it, and it's also so much a heart of Sweden that has been forgotten. People in Sweden hardly know where it is. If you don't say the high coast, we don't have that many tourists there either yet.
Yeah. I think that it's a nice similarity, though, that you explain it as the memory of the history of what was, and it still lives in the people there, because I think that's quite true for Ulven also, even though that the history is further away than the ones we're talking about. But it does create a form of sadness, and it's sort of almost like visible, or you can almost touch it sometimes, especially when you talk to people who live there, when they start explaining their history, and, you know, in generations back who used to work with this. On Ulven, it was fishing, of course, and also the people tend to move away from there. So, like I said, it's only 30 people still living there. So I think that's quite a point on.
I think that's something excuse me, something that I felt reading your novels, and this may be just a coincidence. I was reading something about Twin Peaks. And of course, your novels don't have that David Lynch weirdness, not that. But there was a sense of kind of a really deep tragedy there, something sadness or something like that. And on the other hand, you are really empathetic to the place, that you really seem to like the people. You are not afraid to describe the darker aspects of the places, but you also seem to have real empathy for the local people there. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. You shouldn't go and write something about a place if you don't have empathy for the place and for the people. I think just like coming as a writer from Stockholm and just like, you know, get the settings exciting in some way and write about this. I absolutely hate when you write about the countryside, and I mean, people are like suspicious, hiding behind curtains. It's like a bit weird. It's rather common actually when you write about the northern part of Sweden, like small villages where people sitting, you know, time has stopped and so on. To me, it's crucial to try and find like the soul of the place, and to really describe the people as people and not just as countryside people. I mean, you've got all kinds of people there as well. You got some lunatics, of course, but I mean, most people are everywhere. So I think to me, it's very important.
That's probably the reason. I like what you say, that we're empathetic to the place. That's probably why we can write a little bit about those people who are actually looking behind the curtains, because those people are there. But since we're trying, speaking for myself, I'm trying to portray it as a really fantastic place, and like to really show the people who live there. I think that's why you can touch upon it a little bit. If it would be someone who never lived there, who never visited, like you say, just write about somewhere up north, then it would be like cliche if you would try to write those people if you don't know them and if you don't like actually enjoy the place.
Yeah, and at least you have to, like, I've been writing about places that I haven't been to before, like Buenos Aires or Sudetenland. But the thing is to just go there and be there and like be loyal to the place. I think.
Get to know the soul of the place.
Yeah. And that also, when you do that, the book starts writing itself.
Yeah.
Because then you also get the stories, you get the feeling of the place, the nature starts talking to you, and the houses starts talking to you, but you have to listen.
Weren't you at all worried that what the locals think about your novels? Or was that a positive thing? How did you feel about that?
I was a little bit worried. It turned out to be, I didn't have to be concerned about that at all because people have been very friendly and happy about it. But I was quite worried about writing about the Estonia background. That was a real concern of mine, that people would feel that I was being inconsiderate to what happened in the disaster. And people have asked me if I have experience of it or if I know someone who has experience of it, and I don't. But so far also nobody has criticized that, the choice of setting.
Yeah, I'm always a bit afraid when I start a book will I be able to do this in a way, or will everyone hate me afterwards? I mean, I wrote a book about where my family come from, very far up north in Sweden on the border to Finland. And I was totally prepared that I will never be able to get back here, and they will roll me in feathers and throw me out. But actually, it had never happened. And with this Ådalen book, it's people love it. People are so proud. They're so proud and so happy, and they're always proud and happy to be seen. Yeah, and that you mention, I have lots of. I mention every village I write about. It's like every stone, and that it's important. It adds another quality that you actually, people who haven't been there before should feel like now they have, and people who have lived there for their life should feel like, oh well, I recognize it, and I feel like home.
Maybe we have to move on. I'd like to talk about those places a lot because I was reading your books in Ostrobothnia, which is on the opposite side of the Gulf in Finland. And I was spending my summer in a small village, and I could recognize some of the characters you were writing about. But let's move on a bit. Lina, you already mentioned you are describing, or one of your main character is a survivor of the Estonia catastrophe. What kind of research or kind of soul searching you had to do in order? Because you really, I think you describe really well a person with a trauma like that.
Well, the research was horrible, of course, and the soul searching was deep. I had to think good and hard if I wanted to actually display this. And also, this will be, I don't know how much I can give away, but there's something unfinished for him, that happened on the Estonia, and this will continue during another couple of books for him to figure out what happened. And so it takes quite a big place in the whole history of Fredrik. So yes, I wanted to do it very respectfully. I've done lots and lots and lots of research. And I'm trying not to mention, I'm trying to make the setting as realistic as possible. But for instance, there were no survivors in the age of Fredrik and his brother, who there's a mystery around later. So things like that, I wanted to be very careful, not to say like that could be me or that could have been my family. And also I'm trying to stay clear of all the conspiracy theories of that's been going on in media lately, and I wanted to portray something that people in Sweden and Norway, Finland, Estonia could relate to, but without sort of putting it out there too much and sort of digging into details too much, because people know this already. They feel it in their souls what happened here, it's if I can say, a thankful setting. Yeah,
it's also a collective trauma. So even people who went there, I think everybody remembers that night, that when it happened. Okay, something completely different in your novel. This is more of the thriller side or the crime fiction side. I'm a horror writer, so maybe it's just me, but some of these kind of twisted religion stuff in your novel, I felt that. Do you have any influences from kind of psychological thrillers or even horror?
That's a really funny question, because my editor and my publisher said when I had the first draft of the novel, she's like, if you want to write a horror, you should be writing horror like this. You have to stick to your genre. But I tend to sort of sway out to the horror genre, and I'm fascinated by it. But No, like I never wrote it, like seriously sat down to write a horror novel, but yeah, it's there and it's going to continue to be there because I really like the element of, you know, looking over your shoulder and like the creepy people.
Good, don't listen to them, just carry on as you did with this novel. So
I so wanted to, I have a doll that I actually bought her at an auction in America. It's a porcelain doll, and I had her sent to the photographer who was going to do the cover of the book, and he put blood on her and he, like, you know, torched her hair and stuff like that. And in the end they said, like, this is too much horror, we can't have that on the but my publisher actually had her in her office, but with a paper bag over her head because she thought it was looking so scary.
Okay, so that element really is there.
It's there.
Tove, your story is fictional, and the crimes in your story are fictional, but there's maybe a bit related question with the one I just asked Lina. There are also some real crime cases that you were thinking about, right? Could you talk a bit about that without giving any spoilers?
Without giving out too much, yes. It's also a book about memory and oblivion. I've been very passionate, very interested in it. It was like in the late 90s and early 2000. It was like in Sweden and elsewhere in the world as well, very much trust in that we had hidden memories that could be revealed during therapy. But if something traumatic had happened to you, you could forget about it. It was like hidden memories, and the therapist tried to find out that. And we had this very, very famous case with Thomas Quick, who actually confessed for numbers of murders in therapy. And he was actually convicted for, I think it was 8 of them, but it was revealed by journalists later that it was totally made up. They had no technical proof, nothing. And we also had some other cases in where kids were supposed to have murdered and so on. And I think it's fascinating because it's also about our memory, how it works, what happens to a person if you say to this person that it was like this, that you keep feeding memories to his mind, and how can he then know what are my own memories of the situation, what have other people told me, can I trust in my memories, and is what I remember actually the truth? And I think that it's very interesting topics and very useful in a crime novel. So I wanted to go deeper into that, also because of those like cases we have had.
It's interesting because that fad never really came to Finland, as far as I know. I mean, these blocked memories thing that people would, you know, find hidden memories and stuff like that. But it's, of course, it's a really, yeah, it's a really interesting topic. But there's another thing about these kind of maybe collective tragedies. You also already talked about there's a certain kind of sadness and the phantoms in the Ådalen area. But you mentioned one specific case, which I don't know if in English it would be the Ådalen incident, but this happened in 1931 when workers who were on strike, where several of them were shot by the military, I believe. Yes, do you think things like this are also kind of phantoms?
Called in the military, they were protesting against, they were on strike, and the military the Swedish state called on the military, and 5 people were shot that day. And and one of them was a girl who just stood by, who was 20 years old, and she was called Eira Söderberg. So I named my police after her, so that my police could carry on the story, this history, through the book. And it's a huge trauma in Sweden. I mean, number one, the state don't shoot at their own people. It's nothing. It's something you don't do. And it was also the start for this whole Swedish model that we have to negotiate on the workers, and the employers have to negotiate to find solution. We have not to have any violent strikes and everything. So that was actually like the start of that. But in Ådalen, it's been a big trauma also. They're like still stick in the grip of that tragedy and that brutal history. And I wanted just start to let it go, start to loosen that grip. Talk about it, but the book is not about it, but it's still there. You can never like forget it or hide it or something.
I think it's another level of the idea of the roots that you use so beautifully in the novel. These things go deeper, they grow their roots, and something that happens now, it has its deep history behind it as well.
Okay.
And also that the main character, when you grow up in a part of the country like that, you also carry the memories with you, all these roots, all these stories. I mean, you have all that, while a police officer flying in from Stockholm haven't got that memory.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
How about, because both of your novels have been sold abroad, so that you've sold some of the translation rights to several places, but they are so Swedish. And this is something I always still, maybe I shouldn't be surprised because this has happened before, but they are so Swedish with the surströmming, snus, stuff like that. When you write, do you try to accommodate? Do you ever think about the international audience? We Finns understand it, so it's not a problem for us. But do you think about the poor Italians or something like that? How can they understand that? If Lina, could you reply first?
Yeah, honestly, no, I never thought about that because I never actually thought that the book would sell in Sweden or definitely not sell abroad. So no, I never thought about that. Although I think it just gives a specific character to the book. I like that when it's, even though if I read about something that's sets, in Italy or in Spain or whatever, I might not understand all of it, even though I don't understand the little bits and things they use and the things they eat, but it gives a character and it puts you in that place. So I don't think it will be a problem, but no, I didn't think about it when I wrote the book. Maybe I should.
No, neither do I. No, I think it's just as Lina says. I mean, that's what they like. That's what they want to read about. I love reading novels that takes place in Guadalupe, and that takes me to Guadalupe.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about it, but the more details I get, the more I can feel that I'm there. So I think we should just like write it how it is.
So there's something interesting happens there when you write it to the Swedish or maybe Nordic audience. These are kind of nice, familiar things you know, but then they become exotic when you take them somewhere else. But it still works. So there is no. I agree with this, and it's the same. You can read a novel by a Kenyan writer, and there are a lot of things that you don't understand, but it's still you get the sense of the place.
Yeah, and in the best case, you actually get interested. I mean, that you might want to go there, or you might want to try that food or use that.
Surströmming.
Surströmming.
No, except for the surströmming.
Except for surströmming, yeah.
I haven't tried that, so okay. How about, crime fiction in general? You are now guests in a very popular crime fiction festival. It's been a huge success year after year. And this kind of crime fiction, the popularity just seems to go on and on. I don't know if you as crime writers are already bored with this question, but what's this secret? Well, it seems that there are new audiences for it all the time. Can you give a quick explanation in 2 sentences? You don't have to do that, but short reply. What's your take on why is crime fiction so popular?
I actually thought about this question before, and I mean, it's so rooted in people to tell stories, from scribblings in caves to hieroglyphs to whatever. So I mean, we have this rooted deep need to tell stories to each other, and I think why crime works so well is because there is that little twist of what's going to happen. And I mean, that is the whole point of storytelling. You want to engage your audience and you want them to think, what about the next step? And that's how you write like a good book that people want to continue reading. So I think it's the genre itself that we need to thank for, the deep need, telling stories and guessing the ending. And I don't think it's going to go away.
I've answered this question like 1,000 times. I try to come up with new answers because I get so bored of the whole answers. But I think it's also this, that you are actually involved in solving the mystery. I think that, I mean, we people, we really want to solve mysteries. I mean, we look up at the sky and say, how can there be lights up there? Or how come that it's not flat like the horizon or something? We want to know that. And I think that's part of it, because you get involved in solving the mystery all the time through the book. I think that's a little part of it too.
Okay, and sorry for asking this question, because I knew that you've given a reply to this for maybe 150 times, but there was one more. One more thing, we are soon running out of time, but both of your novels revolve, at least partly, around midsummer. And when I was reading this, I felt that there's something about midsummer that is perfect for a crime story. But what is that? Do you have any answer to that?
I think it's magical, it's mythical, and it's the perfect setting of sun and happiness and people, you know, eating and drinking and being happy, and that's the perfect place to make something really scary and bad happen.
And it's also a bit scary that the lights never goes out. You can never hide in the dark. It's like it also twists your mind a bit. You know that? I mean, you also for the midnight sun.
Yeah.
We get a little bit twisted in our minds too. You know, things can happen.
A really good answer, actually.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but because you would think that Christmas would be that, because it's always dark, but actually it's, you know, it's more complicated, it's more difficult, I think. But midsummer
light can be more scary than the dark.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We could have gone on for maybe an hour or two, but now we are running out of time. Thank you very much, Lina Areklew and Tove Alsterdal. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation of your names with my Finnish pronunciation. But anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for these brilliant novels. I had a blast reading them. They were perfect. I'm waiting also for other novels in the series, so can't wait to get to read those as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope to be in Helsinki next time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.